we'll have more joining as we go along. But let me just open this this EOcafe. I hope everyone's got their coffee with them. If you wish, so welcome to the second EOcafe. This is the second one we've held. The EOcafe is meant to be an informal meeting place where we can just sit and chat and talk about important issues relating to the Earth observation industry. It's the second EOcafe, as I said. We're going to maintain the theme of COVID. What I'd suggest is that we try keeping cameras on. Last time we didn't have any cameras on, and I think we lose the social part of the call. So let's try and keep the cameras on, keep the microphones off, but and we'll try and if you want to raise a question or to intervene, put a message into the chat, and we'll try to follow that. And I'll call you in to speak at the appropriate time. So if you've got questions, just enter them into the chat, and we'll do it. So keep the cameras on, microphones off. Of course, if you don't want to put the camera on, you don't need to. But if we have an issue, if we start to have technical problems, then I'll ask you to turn them all off. But we'll give it a go, because hopefully that will make the whole event, the whole EOcafe, more enjoyable. As I said, this is the second EOcafe that we've organised. We're planning a whole stream, but this one again is devoted to the theme of COVID. The last one we looked more at the policy issues and the policy issues around our sector, and we had speakers from the Commission. Today we're going to a much more practical aspect of the COVID crisis. We're very pleased to have Danielle Azevedo with us, who we've been working with. Danielle is the Director of Commodities, Trade and Technology at COPA-COGECA. COPA-COGECA is the trade association in Brussels dealing with agriculture cooperatives, farmers, and Daniel may say a few more words about that. You've all heard of how our food supply chain is being impacted, being disrupted by the crisis. You all have heard or read different stories in the papers or on the news. And COPA-COGECA as an organization is working extremely hard at trying to maintain the food supply chain and to tackle barriers that are emerging to the effective operation of the food supply chain. So the core of food security. So Danielle will tell us about some of the things that they've been doing. I've been very impressed with some of the meetings they've been holding and the depth to which they're going. After Danielle's finished, we'll have a short response from Sven Gilliam from Vito, who is also leading the food security showcase in EShape. And so he'll just say a few words in response about Earth observation and food security. So at that point, without any further ado, I'll hand over to Danielle to tell you about the work that they're doing. Danielle, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation to be here with you today. I think this is one of the first digital tools we are adopting after COVID-19, and I think this type of technology will continue in the future. It will change a lot the way we do things right now, in particular for lobbying in Brussels, I would say. Just perhaps to introduce a little bit COPA-COGECA, we are the voice, the European voice of European farmers and cooperatives. Both COPA and COGECA are different organizations, but we do have a common secretariat in Belgium with 50 people, 50 staff that is supporting the work of COPA and COGECA. So we work in 6 different languages. COPA represents the interests of 22 million farmers and their families across Europe, and COGECA is a European organization that represents the interests of cooperatives. We have about 22,000, represent about 22,000 cooperatives across Europe. We have members in 26 member states, if I'm not mistaken, and we have some partner organizations as well across, for example, Switzerland or Norway that are working with us. And of course, one of the ways that this virus has changed the work we do, we have to adopt some of these virtual meetings, and in particular, because we work with 6 different languages, we actually have to find a system where we could use interpretation in order to connect with our farmers and have these political discussions. Regarding the supply of food, I think was at the beginning it was very very good news that EFSA, our food safety agency, confirmed that food is not a transmission route for the virus. So that was a very good news. But despite this pandemic, the EU farmers and agri cooperatives have been able to maintain the supply of food to citizens across the EU, thus ensuring European food security. We are committed to continue doing this, and you see that agriculture was considered one priority sector. We have, if you go to your supermarket or to your local supermarket, you'll see there is no lack of food. And so one person could believe that basically everything is working as it used to do, but it's not the case. I think the first reaction we had in the first weeks or the first days was to ensure, in particular when the member states started implementing some of the measures at the border level, was to emphasize the importance to maintain the single market that works, that functions properly, because it includes workforce, it includes, for example, inputs, feed, seeds, or plant protection products, fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, spare parts for machinery, because we need to start preparing for the next harvest, and also the outputs, so that to ensure that our agricultural goods were moving within the single market, to ensure that our population get this food, but also internationally, because many of our sectors are exporters, or they import some of inputs that are important for the agricultural production. So we soon understood and taking into account that agriculture is a very integrated market, so it's a true single market, that the single market is very valuable, and it will be cheaper to maintain the single market working than actually then have to use less target EU market management measures. So we have been pushing, and we keep pushing for the member states to ensure that the functioning of the single market. We welcome, for example, the introduction of green lanes in order to ensure the circulation of goods. And I think there were days where the queues at the borders could be measured by satellites. And we could use that information in order to demonstrate the impact at the borders. There is a second issue that is also cross-sectoral, which is about labor issues, labor shortages. So because of the restriction on movement on people, there has been some difficulties to get the skilled workforce that we need for our farms in order to make the harvest or to prepare for the next season. And these already had some impact on some products like asparagus. You probably have seen that in the news. And that, of course, we need to maintain the health status, but we have been trying to ask the Commission to take measures, and they have approved some guidelines to ensure that that those workers could move safely, and that we'll have the workforce. But it's also the same, for example, imagine for a processing plant, where if one employee gets the virus, then you have to quarantine a lot of their colleagues to ensure that the disease doesn't propagate. But these are very specific jobs. They're very skilled, and it's not easy to train other people. So you need to ensure that there is some kind of protocol to ensure the continuity of the food supply. And then, of course, an important aspect is liquidity. And access to financing to continue performing their jobs. We have now obviously started working on the specific sectors, and we moved then to the aspect of what has been the impact on different sectors, because yes, you still have food in the shelves, but as many of the channels where our products would go, they are closed. Like for example, hotels, restaurants. So just to give you an example on dairy, you know, you need some products like or butter or some other products would go to EORECA, and they are not finding their way there. So there is now some product that is available but doesn't find a place where to go. And another clear example are flowers and plants. And during the spring, they usually do between 50 to 70% of their annual turnover. And the sales, they go quite well. They are very important for the sustainability of that particular sector. So if their capital is basically invested on the plants that they are growing, and because of the restrictions, most of their channels just disappear, and they could not basically sell their production. So there have been losses up to 80% or even more, and the sector is in the brink of collapse. You can find that also in some subsectors like fruits and vegetables, where you have impact in different sectors, and you need, for example, for strawberries or for some fruits, in order to start the harvesting period, you need labor force in order to ensure that you can actually collect the work of an entire year. Also in the meat sector, you have seen that the Commission, for example, has last week, after intensive lobbying, the Commission has published certain measures to support some of the sectors. For example, they have published, or they will provide some support for private storage for certain products like sheep meat or beef meat or some dairy products. And the reason is basically that, for example, for beef, it is the channel where you would buy the high quality beef will be on restaurants, and that's no longer available. So it's very hard to start packaging and selling these type of products via retail. So there's been a change in consumption on the consumption market, and we need to try to adapt. So basically the reasoning of the Commission was, let's buy some of the product, let's put it in the freezer, and then once the restaurants and hotels are back, then we can sell this product through the channels, and we gain time. At the same time, we stabilize the markets. You will see also that this goes across other sectors, like for example wine, where there has been already the wine has actually benefited for many years of very good market conditions. In the last months, you have seen some implications in terms of market restrictions or imposing some duties, for example, from the United States on some of our wine products, and together with the COVID-19 impact, where all the restaurants, the bars are closed, so it was a very good market for wine. This is leading to actually now to have an oversupply of the product, and it's very hard to sell it. So we have been asking for measures in order to tackle this. You can imagine that some of the measures are quite drastic, like for example, this making distillation of wine to turn it into alcohol for the disinfectant. So it is quite a challenge period for the agriculture sector. I could go on. There's impact also on potatoes, and if you heard, for example, in Netherlands and Belgium, a huge impact because people are no longer buying fries that were sold in restaurants or festivities, and therefore there is a lot of the product cannot find their way to the market. And it even led to the Belgian government to ask people to start doing fries every 2 days at home or 2 days a week at home, in order to help to stabilize the market. So I will close my my first introduction with this these aspects. I will just possibly mention two last aspects in terms of international markets, because we have seen that some of the markets are now coming back to life, like for example the Asian market, but step by step. Of course, there were some issues in terms of customs because there was lack of personnel to deal with it. But we are now having some concerns regarding other markets that are now being affected by COVID-19, and of course their consumption is decreasing, and some of the measures might also lead to disruption of the international markets. And there are some markets like the US where it's a very good market for high quality products of the EU. So it is really concerning, and we are following this very closely. But also we have seen in certain aspects, even though things are working quite well in certain member states, we have our members have reported some increasing of unfair trade practices that we have been notifying the Commission in order to take some action. But I would just conclude right here, and I will wait for your questions. But I think maybe a final note. The role of the remote sensing will be quite useful, for example, in Belgium to assess the production that is still in the field, or the extension of some of the production, the products that were not harvested, whether it's on fruits and vegetables, etc. So there are some interesting tools that could be very useful to analyze the situation in the agriculture sector at this moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. We were sent a headline from the Australian newspaper about how the Belgian government had asked to eat more chips. So that was your comment there was something I meant to flag as well. I think what we're seeing is such a sort of a disruption, such a highlight of the sensitivity of different parts of the supply chain and the need for accurate information, that it seems that there could be quite a role for satellites to play, either now in the future, or about planning for a new normal. So I'd like to introduce Sven Guillaume. Sven is leading the showcase on food security as part of the EARSC project, which is a European showcase project to highlight the different applications in which Earth observation, and particularly Copernicus Earth observation more generally, can play a role. So I just invited Sven to make some initial comments in response to Danielle, and then we'll throw it open to everyone else to pose questions or to offer views. Sven.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the introduction, and Daniel, thanks for the very nice explication you just gave. Not sure on how many people know EShape in detail. I'm not going to give a long introduction, but just very short, and then maybe a connection with what Daniel just said. So, like Jeff mentioned, EShape is a unique Horizon 2020 project based around 27 pilots in 7 thematic domains: agriculture, disaster, energy, health, ecosystem, climate, and water. And as Jeff mentioned, Vito is leading the agricultural showcase, or I must say food security and sustainable agricultural showcase, because that's the official title. Within that showcase, we have 4 pilots focused towards, in fact, demonstrating that European capability in providing cloud-based services for industry, for decision makers, for research. And although some of the aspects that Daniel mentioned, we are currently monitoring. We do monitor the potatoes, and we do know how much production there is, and what the amount of fields that are currently under production, what is harvested, what is not harvested. So that's something that we monitor, and not only for the potatoes. We are, however, not monitoring queues at the border of lorries, not workforces. So I think what I'm trying to say is that some of the aspects of the supply chains cannot be monitored by remote sensing, or we are not currently focusing on them. But in EShape, we have one of the objectives is in fact to have an onboarding process. So maybe some of the bright ideas that are going to start here in this EOcafe and in this discussion might come up as a new pilot in demonstrating some of the capabilities of combining in situ and the Copernicus datasets for remote sensing. The pilots as such, we have different levels of pilots in the Food Security and Sustainable Agricultural Showcase, trying to address some of the different aspects that were mentioned in the previous presentation as well. The first one is actually support for GeoGLAM. So that's really the global agricultural monitoring. So looking at different commodity markets at global scale, where wheat production in Russia, is it doing good or bad? Is it what's the situation in Australia? So to give information on a production level at global scale. What we're doing there is looking more in detail to crop calendars to have better estimation on when is growing, when certain crops are growing where, and to improve global yield modeling as well. The second pilot is more on policy level and European policy level. So that's support of developing services to support farmers in Common Agricultural Policy, so the CAP monitoring aspect. That is led by our Greek colleagues from NOAA. They're working together with Neuropublic. They have a system that is operational in Greece and they want to expand it. That's the idea. The third pilot is insurance, so vegetation index insurance. It's being implemented in Ethiopia, and so that's really our food security aspect, providing farmers in Ethiopia with an insurance. So if something goes wrong, they can reinvest and start planting new crops, or make sure that they at least survive that season and are able to continue the next season. And the final pilot is really working on in support of the agro industry, where we work based on our Watch It Grow platform. So it was a platform developed by Vito for the Belgian potato industry. So we got it directly from the industry, Jeff, that we needed to eat more fries. I think if I open up my Twitter, I see Belgapom continuously saying that we need to eat more fries. But that's good. My wife is not too happy with that because we're getting fat here, but anyway, doesn't matter. So it's based on that platform where we now work much more on integration with machine builders like AVR, the potato harvesting machines, but also with a seed breeding company in Italy, to get more in situ data coming from the machine. So combining all these data to have a better idea on the monitoring of the fields, combining in situ with the remote sensing data, giving us a better idea on what kind of biomass of what kind of crop, what will be the yields, to indeed come to some of those answers to some of those questions that you raised at the end of your presentation, Daniel, with what is the current production, what is on the field, what is left on the field, what is not harvested. So we can also already do these estimations, difference between last year and the current year. So giving a bit of the an idea of the impact of COVID on the current agricultural production on the field. And I think with that, I would like to conclude and go into the Q&A, Jeff, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. There are a lot of service providers there joining the call. So I would like to invite any questions or any comments about the services that maybe you see as being important in this time. I don't see any questions in the chat. Is that just me, or am I missing anything?
No, there are no questions.
So if you want to raise a question, either put it in the chat. Now you can raise a hand if you wish, and I'll try and spot you. But I think one of the things you talked about, Daniel, was the meat processing, and we've read recently about problems in the US about sickness in the processing and having to close the whole plants. This is leading problems to the farmers with their beef, with their pork. Do you see similar things here, or are the processes different, so there is not the same issue?
Yeah, the risk is always there. As you can imagine, in a situation like this, there is always a risk that someone contracts the disease and then that it spreads to their colleagues. We know that, for example, in our cooperatives, many of them have processing facilities, so they have followed the protocols and have provided all the material to their employees. I'm not aware of major processing plants that have closed in Europe. We know that there is a risk that we need to prepare, in particular because these are quite, how to say it, in the agriculture, everyone thinks that these are very non-skilled jobs, etc. But this is actually the opposite. People that are working in agriculture, they need to be very skilled because these are very specific jobs, and in particular in processing plants, you need really to have the skills. You need to be trained. You need to understand what are the protocols in terms of health status. But in Europe, at least, we are very proud that we have quite high biosecurity in our farms. We have quite high biosecurity in our processing plants. We have a lot of high food safety, environment, animal health, and animal welfare standards. And for the moment, there hasn't been a massive disruptions of the food supply to our citizens, and for the next weeks we don't expect to see also major disruption. But of course, there is an impact on certain segments of the market, and in particular in certain commodities. Like, for example, I can give you an example. On the pork market, it's going quite okay. It's a meat that usually is very looked in the retail sector. Of course, there is a decrease of the price, but there is not a massive disruption. But if you look into very specific segments, for example, there is a piglet that is roasted in the southern countries of Europe, and it's a specific breed that is not used for breeding. And with the closure of Horeca, there is no market for that pigs, and so those piglets that are now being bred, they don't have any place where to go. They are just collapsing. Or, for example, very high quality products such as like prosciutto or etc. It's really hard now to find their way out because they are served in restaurants or in places where you go for tapas or etc. So it is impacting certain segments of the market. But for the moment, we are not aware of massive closures of processing facilities. But of course, we keep an eye because something that is also very interesting from the satellite perspective is we have currently monitoring a specific disease, which is the African swine fever that came from the east and is now affecting mainly wild boars and then backyard farms. It ends up to infect some of the farms, and currently the border is basically between Poland and Germany, where the disease is progressing slowly, and it's very important to monitor the wildlife. For example, wild boars, which are a massive vector of contamination to our production. So the ear is also a very important role to maintain control and management of wild boar, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many dimensions to this. Gerhard, you wanted to come in and say something, Gerhard Triebnig?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I drafted a second message saying, unfortunately, I have to leave the meeting now. But let me please pass on this message that I posted into the chat about something going on at the moment, funded by the European Space Agency, which is called a script contest for using Earth observation data, in particular the data cube services established by ESA, in the context of CoVid. So very simple application by submitting 1 or 2 slides of an idea. There is a jury which then will select ideas, and those ideas will get free access to commercial data, very high resolution data, to cloud processing resources, to data cube facilities. And there is also one category which is related to agriculture. So I just wanted to spread this information. Maybe there is somebody in this round here who would be interested to learn more about this. And unfortunately, and sorry, I will have to escape.
Yeah, we've reached the 4:30 mark, which we set. We said, if people want to carry on talking, we can carry on, and I think Daniel has a little bit of time. But if there are if there are no further comments, then we can close the cafe. Thanks, Gerhard. I mean, there are other there are other initiatives as well. There's a hackathon going on at the moment in Sofia, which has various teams trying to come up with new ideas, new applications, with the focus on COVID and health more generally. So there's an awful lot of things going on around this, not surprisingly, and we'll continue to promote as many of those as we can. It looks as though everyone's either relaxed at home or worn out at home or ready for the long weekend. I'm not sure which.
I could come in with a comment, Jeff, if...
Yeah, okay, Chetan, and then David has posted a question as well. So Chetan.
Hi, Chetan, sorry.
Okay, I'll go first then. Yeah, I mean, not really remote sensing related, but thank you, Daniel. Very interesting presentation. I also skimmed through the reports that Natasha circulated, which were very, very interesting. It strikes me that at some point we reach limits of what interventions the Commission can do, and no matter how much we call for action, at some point, storage fills up and they can do no more. And it also strikes me that at some point, once we get into recovery, taking actions now just leads to other complications later on. So if the Commission has a lot of stocks stored up on whatever it is, meat, pork or veal or whatever, the agricultural sector is not stopping producing these things. And there's then the question of how you release those stocks back into the market. So it does seem it's a fascinating subject area, and a very complex one, clearly.
So Daniel, maybe we'll take the question from David and then you comment on both, Daniel. David?
Yeah, can you hear me? I hope my microphone is working.
We hear
Perfect. You. Hi, my name is David Glitzes. I work for GeoVille, and my question goes a bit in the direction. I mean, we are talking a lot of ideas, and we have a lot of them and pilots. And the question is really towards Gojea. How many operational use cases are there existing, really using satellite data in the daily routine? I mean, because we know a lot of initiatives and the ideas are widespread, and I think there's a huge potential. I try to get an estimate on how much operational use is there. So how many? We know the GeoGlam, but then on a more detailed level, is it widely spread among farming associations? It is a complex question, but I really just try to get a feeling, because it's from, at least from outside, and hard to estimate to see. We talk about ideas, but maybe the operational use that we're having might have a large impact. So I try to get this So what's the feeling of COP? Do we have reached the limit, or are we still at the beginning of what can be done? So what's your statement on that? Was a clear question, I hope?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the quickest answer is we are far away from the limit. We don't have yet a clear idea how many of these projects are actually impacting. We know that farmers more and more are using it, and in particular with the support of agri-cooperatives. Cooperatives are quite important in this because they facilitate the use of new technologies by farmers. And I think the previous speaker mentioned already what is happening in Greece, where one of our cooperatives, Gaia, is partnering up with Euro Republic, and they are developing this system that implements the infrastructure in the field, and then they provide their technical knowledge that brings all the data that is collected by satellite or by meteorological stations, by the farmers, etc. And they try to provide advisory to farmers. This is a clear example. And your question is quite relevant because just before this crisis, we were actually partnering up with EARSC, trying to find clear evidence about the use of remote sensing and all the digital technologies on agriculture, and actually what are the benefits. So because the discussion has been very theoretical, in particular in Brussels, and it is important that we provide evidence to our decision makers of the benefits or the impact of these technologies and how can they help. So this is one of the projects that we have ongoing that will be delivered hopefully now before the summertime, that will have actually clear evidence of the use of this technology. So perhaps I will not be able to answer with the right number right now, but hopefully by summer we will know a little bit more what to say. And regarding the first question about the private storage in particular, well, this crisis again is not one crisis that was provoked by agriculture. We are again paying the cost of something else that is happening, like we also paid for the Russian ban, or we are very concerned also about the Brexit. So these are political decisions, and in the case of the COVID-19, it's something that is outside our control. It was not provoked by us. On the private storage, the Commission actually has quite a lot of experience on managing private storage. It has been very efficient on the use of these tools. So the theory behind it is right now the markets are closed, but they will reopen in the future, and that this has been used, for example, in 2015, 2016. With the pig meat, when there was after the Russian ban, where that market was closed, but very quickly our cooperatives or our agri-food chain found new markets, for example, in China. And what we needed was, instead of destroying food, was to keep the food in the fridge and then release it for the markets when they are open. And that has been quite efficient. In this case, and they had a lot of experience. So this could actually maintain the investment in Europe and maintain the investments of agriculture, because we're really looking forward to continue investing on our natural resources according to the EU framework. And in order to be more sustainable, we need to keep investing in better and new technologies. And this is an important step that we have the support of the European institutions to maintain the investment that we have done and to continue the future of agriculture in Europe.
Is there strong support in Parliament?
There is strong support from the Parliament. Yeah. And just today, I don't know if you had the opportunity to follow, the European Commission for Agriculture was in the Parliament for, I think, 2 weeks ago and today, answering to questions to the members of the Parliament that were asking for a clear support to the agricultural sector. They believe, like us, that the first package that was put forward was a good step. It's a first good step in order to support some of our sectors, but it's clearly not sufficient. There are many sectors that were left outside, like, for example, the veal sector, or that measures are insufficient, like for fruits, for plants and flowers, or for wine, and that we need to do more in order to support these sectors.
I was interested in the comments you have in the report about aquaculture, but David, you wanted to come back in.
Yeah, please. So I'm very happy that you are in contact with EARSC and having this discussion on further using satellite data. Actually, I have a kind of a proposal to make, because I'm not only representing GLO and my self-interest. I'm also for Horizon 2020 project. Some of you of the audience knows already about it, and some are already involved. It's called EO for Agri. The whole purpose of this project is to foster and to increase the use of Copernicus and other satellite data in support of agriculture. So it's a support project by the European Commission. So we're talking about what can the European Commission do, and not only in terms of the COVID crisis, but in food security in general. And the whole project purpose is to engage with different stakeholders, to collect requirements, and to like bring them on a systematic level and push through research agenda and a policy strategy map. And the whole outcome of this project will be measured how we will succeed in fostering and improving the use of satellite data. And as you said, I think we agree that there are so many things more that could be done, and we are making use of pilot studies like the one EOcafe and other initiatives have. But so if you really have this discussion with EARSC and you have some outcomes and some requirements or wishes you would like to bring to the European Commission, so we have a way of fostering that and bring this into the discussion and report back on that. So this is something I can offer as part of this project. So I don't want to intervene here. I just found it quite fitting. So yeah.
No, thanks, David. I mean, we will be providing more opportunities for exchange. Two things I wanted to pick up on were the SEB studies that we do, where we've looked at agriculture, and we're seeing very clearly the potential for the sector in the agriculture domain. You know, it's the penetration into that market at the moment is very small, and there is a lot of potential. And the other, which was mentioned by Sven, was the EOcafe. And we are, in June, we will launch a call to bring new projects into EOcafe. So if there are specific ideas, specific applications which are not mature, not in the market, but which can use support to get to the market, then watch out for that call. I'm going to call the meeting to a close there. Danielle, let me just give you a final opportunity to say anything in summary. Please.
Yeah, so I would like to thank you for this opportunity to engage with you guys, and I wish you a great weekend, but don't forget, eat some fries, get some flowers, open some bottles of wine, eat some nice high steaks, whether you choose, it could be pig, poultry, or beef, just choose. It goes perfectly, some nice red wine with some cheeses. Don't forget the veggies and the fruits of the season, and I wish you a great weekend.
We're all getting fat enough in this situation.
You can do exercise.
More
just ensure it's European products, and
European products,
that will be perfect.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Danielle. For me, it's a fascinating subject. I'm sure we could have done a lot more discussion around it. For everybody, this is a regular event. The next EOcafe will be in 2 weeks' time. We're going to stay with the COVID theme, but we're going to look at the impact on our sector and have people from our sector retailing how they've managed, how it's affected them. So if you have stories around, it will be great to exchange those in the next EOcafe in 2 weeks' time. And we also like to collect some feedback. So there is a Mentimeter open. We'd be grateful for any comments you can make in there. So please take literally 2 minutes, no more, just to go into Mentimeter and provide some direct feedback. So thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you again to Danielle. Thank you, Sven, for your comments, and especially to all of you. Have a great and a very safe weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a nice weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye all. Cheers, Sven.